What's up, Periscope, and happy Monday evening. This is when we're recording this. Welcome to another edition of Berg is the Word. My name is Mark Bergin here in Florida, and this evening we're talking about good news and bad news. The good news is that baseball is back this week. The Grapefruit League will kick off in Florida. First pitch is set for Friday, and on Thursday, the Cactus League will have its first pitch on Thursday. So that's the good news. Bad news is this. The MLB commissioner, Rob Manfred, today announced that Major League Baseball will have a 20-second pitch clock for its minor league games this season, in the event that Major League Baseball could easily implement said pitch clock for the regular season. I wrote about this about a year or two ago, and I'm going to walk you through how Major League Baseball came to this decision, the thought process behind it, and why ultimately I don't think it's the best idea just because they aren't actually going to enforce the rules that they've implemented. So if you have any questions, comments throughout the discussion, I'll do my very best to answer those and bring you into the discussion as well. But again, the MLB commissioner announced that he's looking at different ways to increase rate of play. And I think this is the exact wrong approach to take. I think what Major League Baseball should be more focused on is how they can implement gambling into the everyday game as states decide individually whether or not they'd like to legalize gambling. Since the Supreme Court ruling came down, it's not just the state of Nevada anymore. I know in Mississippi, in New Jersey, and a handful of other states and places, you can now gamble. If I were MLB commissioner, these are initiatives that I would focus on versus rate of play. So how did we come to this? In 2017, Major League Baseball, the average Major League Baseball game was 3 hours and 5 minutes long. That's the longest it's ever been in its history since 1876. So the Major League Baseball, its average game length has been more than 3 hours for the past 3 seasons. That's only happened one other time. That was in 2014. And that's why over the last 5 or 10 years, with these games taking forever to complete, and especially if they go into extra innings, Major League Baseball has now made this decision to do that. Unapologetically, thanks for watching. Twitter user watching, welcome in. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment in. But again, 3 hour long games. So the league is looking to a measure that they adopted in the minor leagues starting in 2015. So in AA and AAA, baseball implemented a pitch clock. So what is a pitch clock? It's going to be 20 seconds long, and the gist is if the batter isn't in the batter's box, the umpire will call a strike, and if the pitcher doesn't deliver his pitch within the 20-second clock, a ball will be issued to the batter, so on and so forth. So the MLB commissioner says that this rule will be phased in. But my question is why have this rule if you aren't going to enforce it? Really, it's almost like speeding. It's like if you're not going to actually enforce the rule that you implement, why have it in the first place? And so they won't effective immediately. They won't be issuing balls and strikes, and it will also not be used for foul balls. I would also suspect that it won't be used when there are runners on base. But my whole thing is this: a pitcher's main goal when throwing to a batter, it's not to strike the batter out, it's to disrupt the hitter's timing. And this disrupts that. And that's why, again, I want to know, and my question tonight is, do you think this is a good idea or a bad idea? Again, if I were the MLB commissioner, I would focus on how gambling is going to be legalized in more states throughout this country, as states have to decide now individually whether or not to allow gambling. If I were the MLB commissioner, that's the initiative I would be pushing towards versus trying to increase rate of play. And a rate of play, yes, while it is important, but there are too many unwritten rules in baseball. Right now, Major League Baseball is trying to appeal to a demographic that isn't going to watch their product one way or another. And that's the truth. And so again, the reason why Major League Baseball came to this decision is for the past 3 seasons, games had taken at least 3 hours on average. And that had only happened once starting in the 2014 season when it was 3 hours and 2 minutes long. So last year, a 3-hour-long game was the third longest ever. And so in 2014, what happened was the league implemented its replay rule system where a team could challenge one play on video review in the first 6 innings and 2 from the 7th inning until the end of the game. So that certainly added to the game's length. And so Manfred said, we will start getting ready for the possibility that we're going to use the pitch clock on opening day. And here's the thing, too, which I think is very important, because this is a measure that the Players Association blocked in 2016 and in 2017. But he does not need under the collective bargaining agreement, Manfred does not need the approval of the Players Association, which is really, really important in all of this. So if he decides that he wants to implement this pitch clock, it will be effective opening day in 2018. We'll see how it goes this spring training. But my question is, I have so many questions about this, but one of them is, could you imagine a playoff series when everything's on the line and they actually enforce these rules? Or is it going to be like the NBA or NFL where they let the boys play, they let the men play when, a big moment is to be had? And so you can't have this rule but then not enforce the rule. Could you imagine a key playoff series being determined by implementing the rules and enforcing the rules of a pitch clock? That's ridiculous to me, and especially I think it puts pitchers at a huge disadvantage whose key role as a pitcher is to disrupt the hitter's timing in whichever way possible. And so, which pitchers take forever to throw? When I wrote about this about a year ago, the 5 pitchers who took the longest between pitches to deliver the ball from the mound to the plate were Yu Darvish, now on the Chicago Cubs, Alex Cobb, who I think's on the Orioles now, Chris Archer, who is on the Pirates, Justin Verlander, former Cy Young winner, takes a long time, and then Jason... I can't even read my own handwriting, but you get the idea. Some pretty well known. Justin Verlander is really the main one, and he won the Cy Young Award, and he's one of the top. When I wrote about this a year ago, he was one of the top 4 pitchers who took the longest to deliver the ball to the plate, again to disrupt hitters' timing. But it won't be used after foul balls, and again, this is something that they've done in the minors. So when they did this in the minor leagues, the study found that the average game length shortened by about 12 minutes once they implemented this pitch clock. But here's my thing. Which demographic of people is going to say, hey, because a game is now 12 minutes less, I'm going to tune in to watch because the rate of play is better? Why not, have teams that score more runs or that steal bases or that are fun to watch from an offensive standpoint or have a little bit of flair in dramatics? Some of the unwritten rules of baseball that have existed for decades, that's what the game is lacking, not a pitch clock. And again, the question I would have for the commissioner is, what demographic are you trying to appeal to by implementing this pitch clock versus how the game currently exists right now? And I get that 3 hours is a long time commitment. If you're talking about a West Coast game starting at 9:30, 10:30 at night, and you live on the East Coast, that's not getting over. And if it goes into extra innings, God forbid, you're talking about games that finish well past midnight. So I certainly get it. Maybe that's some of the thought process. But again, 12 minutes less in game time, is that really making that big of a deal? And to me, the answer is no. I know there's been a lot of clamor about how Bryce Harper and Manny Machado remain unsigned, along with Craig Kimbrell. Manfred said there were 11 players who had a WAR above 1 last year. WAR is wins above replacement. There were 11 players who had a wins above replacement of 1 or more last year that remain unsigned. And it just goes to show you what their market value is as teams get smarter and start to use metrics to measure a player's worth. And I know a lot of people are talking about that. But again, this pitch clock, Manfred can decide to implement it by opening day if he chooses.
Under the collective bargaining agreement, he does not need approval from the Players Association. The players rejected this notion for a pitch clock in 2016 and 2017. We'll see what decision and how this works come this spring training. But again, my question is this: why have a pitch clock if you're not going to enforce any rules with said pitch clock? It doesn't make any sense to me. And please let me know if I am speaking nonsense right now. I would love to hear from you in the comments as well. But the good news is baseball is back this week again. The Cactus League starts on Thursday and the Grapefruit League starts on Friday. But again, these 3-hour games are something that are new. They're something that are new as of the last 5 years, and games haven't been this long in the history of baseball since 1876. But I just think, again, under the provisions of the CBA, if Rob Manfred, the MLB commissioner, just decides to implement this, to me, it's the wrong approach to take. And if I were him, I would try to be partner of the league with some sort of casino or betting casino where fans will be able to place their bets. If I were to bet, more and more states across this country are going to legalize betting. Again, that is now an individual state's right to decide. And so there are only a handful right now. But if I were the MLB commissioner, that's what I would be focusing on versus this pitch clock, which I don't think is going to appeal anyone. You're going to frustrate baseball purists and traditionalists. And again, cutting a game down by only 12 minutes, again, that's what the minor leagues found from 2014 to 2015 when they implemented this. I don't think a game that's 12 minutes shorter on average is really going to appeal to anybody. And if I'm wrong, again, please feel free to let me know in the comments. But again, I was talking to you earlier a little bit about how a lot of players remain unsigned, and they think that some of these big budget teams are being shrewd. 2 teams I would point to: the Oakland A's won 97 games last year. They made the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Rays, where I'm at here in St. Petersburg, Florida, won 90 games. They just happened to play in the AL East with both the Red Sox, who had a historic season, won the most games in a single season in Red Sox franchise history, and the New York Yankees as well. So teams from lower budgets can still succeed, even despite not having a massive payroll, which can also certainly help when trying to attract top talent for teams. We'll see what ends up happening and where Bryce Harper and Manny Machado wind up. I would certainly expect both to be on MLB rosters by the time we have opening day for the regular season. Again, this pitch clock to me just doesn't make a lot of sense, but again, it's something I think it's going to be interesting moving forward as I begin to wrap up this discussion. What Rob Manfred will decide to do and how this actually works and operates this spring training, and if he's going to try to implement this and phase this into the game before the start of the regular season. And could you imagine that too, from a player standpoint, a manager standpoint, an umpire standpoint of, hey, we're trying to change up the rules and we don't even have agreed upon rules before the start of the regular season? It's crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy to me. But again, you can understand if the games are going longer, why the MLB is trying to speed up the rate of play with games. And a lot of that has to do with the video replay system that the league implemented in 2014. I know that the league has since limited the amount of mound visits a team can have as well to try to get the game to move along. Here's another solution too. During the broadcasts, have less advertisements, have less time between innings, and charge more for advertising. To me, this is not rocket science, and I'm sure they have the best system in place to make the most amount of money as possible. But again, if you're cheapening the game itself by having this pitch clock that umpires aren't going to enforce anyways, what's the point? What is the point? Again, my name is Mark Bergin. This is Berg is the Word. If you enjoyed this discussion, share it with your friends. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Happy Monday, and I hope all of you have a terrific rest of your work week. Again, the good news is baseball's back this week, and I'll leave it at that. Again, all of you have a great rest of your evenings. Again, I'm Mark Bergin. Take care. So long. I'll see you next time, everyone.